The next delegation, we are going to number 27 on our list, Dudley Thompson, Chair of the Advocacy Committee of Sustainable Buildings Manitoba, with respect to the Winnipeg Climate Action Plan, and establishment of the Community Advisory Committee.
Thank you for allowing me the time this afternoon. I'm speaking as Chair of the Advocacy Committee for Sustainable Buildings Manitoba. SBM is a not-for-profit volunteer organization funded solely by Manitoba businesses and members, no government funding, focused on making our buildings and our city more sustainable. I'm an architect and operate an architectural firm in the Exchange for 35 years, and I'd briefly like to talk to you today about the Winnipeg Climate Action Plan. I want to start with a very recent quote from the Globe and Mail, editorial October 30th of this year. It said, "City councils will need to be climate leaders. How we build our cities going forward will go a long way in shaping our collective climate future." In August of this year, Edmonton City Council declared a climate emergency. They directed their energy planning staff to prepare, quote, bold action on an accelerated time frame. Polls showed that 75% of Edmontonians were asking their elected representatives for more concentrated and more focused climate action. Edmonton has had a climate action plan fully operational for 10 years, but its carbon footprint had not changed. 3 weeks ago, I participated in a live Zoom meeting similar to this one, where the Executive Council of the City of Edmonton listened as 8 accelerated climate plan change initiatives were presented to Council. This plan outlined that Edmonton will require $65 million annually for climate change initiatives that will respond to global markets while creating diversity and transforming the city. We at SBM have reviewed the City Winnipeg Climate Action Plan and find that our climate initiatives, like Edmonton's, come up short. They have no transparency, they have no urgency, they have no funding, and they have no priority. We're concerned that Winnipeg will be left behind in the transformation of the globe to a green economy. We believe that, like Edmonton and many other cities, we need to identify a climate emergency to aggressively kickstart the decarbonizing of our society. Several weeks ago, we met with the city staff and our Office of Sustainability to offer our energy and support to reinvigorate the climate plan. It was an excellent meeting, very committed staff, but it was apparent that the long-term linear approach defined by the Winnipeg Climate Action Plan would not realize significant results anytime soon. The WCAP is already old and tired and out of date. It's based on a 2018 plan that is based on a 2016 report that is based on 2011 data. So it's 10 years old already, the information that and we haven't updated that data. So after our meeting, we at SBM identified 6 key issues that we would like to start bold action to fast track climate change in Winnipeg. The first one is the WCAP implementation schedule is very slow and out of step with other jurisdictions. While we are still thinking about formulating a plan for net zero buildings, both Toronto and Vancouver are on step 2 out of step 5 in a phased implementation, so that all their new buildings, all of them, will be net zero in 9 years. They're already on that path, so just think about that. Winnipeg should consider immediate implementation of a net zero plan for buildings. Number 2, the energy savings, as I've said before, were based on 2011 metrics. There has been no updated information to know if Winnipeg is on target of meeting its WCAP mandate or not. Edmonton, like many cities, tracks annual metrics and energy reductions to ensure compliance. Winnipeg should consider providing transparent annual energy metrics. The third point is a puzzling one. In the Winnipeg Climate Action Plan, which is presumably looking at how we reduce our energy budgets, one of the interesting things is the WCAP proposes an increase of 25% in natural gas by 2030. So what they're saying that despite overall we're going down, they're anticipating that natural gas is going to go up. This makes no sense. We have the lowest green energy electricity rates in North America. We have technologies like Passive House to create net zero buildings that reduce operating costs by up to 90%. What if all the infill homes were built to the net zero standard that Habitat for Humanity is starting to do in our city? How would the scale of energy saving impact the economy of our city? How would Winnipeg's economy change if $2 billion in gas costs were spent in Winnipeg, not in Alberta? Winnipeg should consider offering incentives for decreased gas use. And I know this isn't just a Winnipeg issue, but cities have to take charge. Number 4, the WCAP infill is proposed to provide 50% of the growth for the city. That's close to current levels. What if it was 60%? How would the reduction in suburban infrastructure costs impact the city budget? How would a condensed city impact transit, cars, emissions? Winnipeg should consider a greater commitment to urban infill. Number 5, the WCAP has no discussion on long-term capital costs for climate action. Edmonton is in process of allocating $65 million a year. Toronto issued a $300 million green bond not long ago to support its climate plan. Winnipeg should consider allocating funds to climate change initiatives. And I know there are a lot of funds that are going into climate change within departments, but the transparency is one of the things that is difficult for anybody to track. The final thing is, one of the most curious omissions in the current implementation phase of the WCAP is the absence of a community advisory committee. The original report was crafted through public consultation, but since that time, almost 3 years ago, there's been no public engagement. The original report identifies community advisory committees time and time again as sort of the bedrock of the whole process to engage in climate change, so that there's an inclusive and a transparent process that can deliver a visionary and pragmatic market transformation. And Winnipeg should consider reinitiating a climate advisory committee. It's free. There are lots of people like myself and others that would love to serve on this and make it happen. We at Sustainable Buildings Manitoba want to be part of the solution. We and many other knowledgeable and committed citizens want to work with the city to provide our volunteer expertise to accelerate our collective climate action, to make our city more inclusive, more resilient, and more sustainable. We can work together with city staff to find ways to address the pressing climate issues and take climate change to our businesses and to our neighborhoods. In conclusion, we ask 5 items from EPC. 1 is to affirm the importance of climate action as a transparent and standalone budget line. I've gone through both budgets, and I know it is part of the Standing Committee on Water and Waste, and I couldn't find anything on climate change specifically. That's concerning. Number 2, accelerate the strategies of the Winnipeg Climate Action Plan, just as Edmonton has done. Number 3, and this is where it comes home today, commit significant funding to climate change initiatives as you set the city budget over the next years. 4, ensure that all future city major capital projects meet net zero compliance. You're building a lot of things over the next 5 years. This is something you have total control over. Just by putting one line in an RFP, this is what has to happen. You can do that. And the 5th one is to reestablish the community advisory committees to offer perspective and wisdom on a path forward. We commend you to be climate leaders. There are many creative and inspiring ideas out there that are being implemented around the globe in the transformation to carbon neutral cities. We want Winnipeg to be part of that transformation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Mace.
Thank you for the presentation. A couple of comments and then I'll have a question. I chair the committee with the extremely long name that has the word environment at the end, so I think it's kind of my responsibility to ask a question. In terms of advisory committee, I did chair the Mayor's Environmental Advisory Committee in 2013-14 under the former mayor when the then new mayor was elected in 2014. My recommendation was to abolish it because I didn't think, frankly, we were doing anything because we were just sort of having a debating society. We did get some work done at Little Mountain Park, yes, but other than that, so it might be time to take a look at that model again. But you know, frankly, having spent a lot of hours at a committee that didn't really have any influence or impact, I think we have to, just having a committee isn't necessarily going to make the difference, but something we should probably take a look at again. You said we're not spending any money, just very briefly. If you think of the four main causes of greenhouse gases in the city, and ag is pretty small, but we did start funding a full-time food council position last year. So we're rolling on the ag stuff at least. Trash, got the pilot project on compost underway. First time we've done that. It's taken years to get going. You might fault us for being too slow, but at least we're finally spending some money. We're getting going on that. Buildings, I would like to sit down and talk to you. I think that's a fair question on, and transit is the fourth, and we've heard various presentations about that. And without the province's support there, we're in much slower going to make progress on the transit front. We do have a fellow in our climate climate advisory group in water and waste, Gurmeet, who's doing work on getting data about buildings and building emissions. I think you're right. We have a lot of old data, but just to reassure you, we are underway getting more up-to-date data. But you were talking about the impact, and frankly, Edmonton's property taxes are 50% higher than ours. So I'm not sure everything they're doing is necessarily leading to tax cuts and helping out to save money for that city. I mean, if you look at the data, they're literally 50% above us. But can you just give us again what you'd like to see us doing on the building side? Happy to meet with you in the new year, because that seems to be an issue that's come up more and more over the past 2 years. And your fair point about natural gas, which when I was a kid, people talked about clean burning natural gas as if it was the wonder fuel. And now, of course, we're trying to get away from that. So long day ahead of us. You can just give us what it is you'd like to see us do on the buildings front, and then perhaps we can meet in the new year.
Sure. Thank you very much, Councillor Mace. And I think as I said earlier, I know there are a lot of things happening. I think the problem that citizens, myself, others have is there's no one place where we can go to see what is happening in climate change. And the WCAP identifies all the things that you want to do, but I don't see it being brought together. So I can sit down with colleagues and look at one document and say, oh, okay, here we are. And other cities do this, where, you know, last year there was this amount of carbon being produced, and this year we're 2% less or 5% more or whatever. So there are metrics that we can see at a glance. In terms of buildings, I think that as I said, both Toronto and Vancouver are already implementing. Like they're going. Toronto's doing this alone. Like, forget the province, forget the province of Vancouver or BC and Ontario, and cities all around the world are just doing what they need to do themselves in order to get on, because that's where the climate is going to be. That's where energy is going to be saved. So, I mean, with the 10 or 15 new buildings that the city is building over the next 5 or 7 years, all of them can be net zero. There's a really good, simple place to start. It's cost neutral on the long term, and I can show you how that works. I mean, when you're saving 90% on operating costs, and you're reducing your water by 50 to 60%, those are real costs that are being saved over the life of a building, which these buildings are probably 75 to 100 years. There are architects in the city who can do this, would love to do this, but we don't have the opportunity. We need the call from leaders like the city and others to be able to do this. And I think in terms of electricity, you agreed with me there, and it's never made sense to me that we buy billions of dollars worth of carbon from Alberta, ship it here, and use it because it's cheap. If we reduce our energy requirements in our building by 90%, then the extra cost of electricity is still going to be a way less than we would pay for a normal building using gas. And then we've reduced our carbon footprint. And the thing is, as an architect, I've often had to talk with clients saying, you know, we can put in a gas furnace for you now, but this is a 70-year building we're building here. Somewhere out there, whether 20 years, 10 years, 15, that is going to have to be replaced. And it's going to have to be replaced with electricity. And if you're not designing the building efficiently enough, then it's going to cost you an awful lot more money. So let's do it right in the first place. So I'd love to have this conversation in the new year with you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. All the very best of the season. Thanks very much for your input today.
Thanks, Mayor Bowman.